Today, a long-awaited report was published in the UK investigating alleged parties that took place at 10 Downing Street when strict COVID-19 rules were in place. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is in the hot seat, but reassuring afterwards that his government can be trusted. Take a listen.
I get it, and I will fix it. And I want to say, to the people of this country, I know what the issue is. Yes, Mr. Speaker, yes. It's whether this government can be trusted to deliver. And I say, Mr. Speaker, yes, we can be trusted.
UK parliamentary hearings are just so fascinating to watch. The investigation by senior civil servant Sue Gray looked into over a dozen gatherings. Earlier, I spoke with international reporter Thomas Cole about the findings. Take a listen.
Today's report was more of an update, as you mentioned, by this civil servant in the United Kingdom, Sue Gray. The report was looking into alleged breaches of lockdown rules in 10 Downing Street. That's the Prime Minister's office in the United Kingdom. 16 events in total of a period of about 18 months between mid-2020 to the end of last year. Now, essentially, the top line news, if you like, is that there was failures of leadership. That was one of the top line points coming out of this report. No names were named in person. There was no accusations against any individuals, including Boris Johnson. But given that he is Prime Minister, given that he is the occupant of 10 Downing Street, big questions now over his future and also over the future of his current government.
For those of us across the pond, Thomas, who is Sue Gray and how did she investigate here?
So Sue Gray is a civil servant. She's not a political appointee. And I guess to go all the way back to the beginning as to how this all started, in early December last year, the first reports came out that there had been breaches of lockdown rules in 10 Downing Street from, I guess, mid-2020. And more reports came out throughout December and early this year. And in the end, it was decided that an investigation needed to take place and it had to be independent. So Sue Gray was the person who was chosen. She is a senior civil servant in the UK civil service. And her report has been pending, I guess, for some time and was ultimately released today. But I want to go back to the first answer I gave as to why I say it was deemed an update and not a full report. At the end of last week, the Metropolitan Police, and that is the police force for London in the United Kingdom, some of the allegations in Sue Gray's investigation have been passed on to them. They wanted to investigate these allegations themselves, and she felt that if she were to publish her report in full, this would prejudice the police investigation. So today's report, I guess, gave a flavor, gave a hint of what the police report is going to say. We don't know when they will report, but just a flavor. It was a short report. It was about 12, 13 pages in total. But the question becomes now, obviously, there are still these big question marks over Boris Johnson. He has denied any involvement in any of this. But it's going to take a lot of political bandwidth, I think, in the UK political domestic debate over the coming weeks. That's certainly something which Boris Johnson would have wanted to avoid.
And to that point, Thomas, how is this report being received, both by Johnson and members of the Parliament?
So Johnson himself, he came to Parliament a couple of hours after he received the report. The report was published lunchtime here in the UK. He spoke in Parliament 3:30 this afternoon. His initial statement was that he was sorry. He apologized for what had been going on. That wasn't taken particularly well by the opposition parties, as you can imagine. They obviously want to get rid of Johnson. But also, crucially, I would say, for more and more members of his own ruling Conservative Party, including former UK Prime Minister Theresa May, who Boris Johnson famously ousted over her handling of the Brexit negotiations almost 2.5, 3 years ago now. She was quite cold in her assessment. She basically said either Johnson didn't know the rules, didn't understand the rules, or didn't think the rules applied to him. And there is a sense, I think, in some members of the Conservative Party that Johnson feels that he is above the law, that he is above the rules. Now, this has been dragging on for 2 months. More and more allegations are coming out. But Johnson, he's managed so far to weather the storm. But if you look at the opinion polls and the way that people perceive how Johnson has handled this, There was a snap poll taken earlier this evening. 62% of respondents felt that Johnson should resign. So, almost 2/3. Whether or not Johnson is ousted in the end depends on the Conservative Party. It's not clear at the moment whether or not they would have the numbers to get rid of him. And even if they could get rid of him, who would want to replace Johnson right now? The earliest, if you want to look at the next electoral challenge for the Conservative Party, would be local elections, I guess equivalent to, say, county elections in the US at state level. They're in May, beginning of May, so 3 months' time. If the Conservatives were to do very badly then and this were to drag on until May, they may see the opportunity then to get rid of him. But I think at the moment, despite all these allegations, despite the big public uproar, Johnson seems safe politically for the time being.
A lot can happen in 3 months, Thomas. There have been several parties reported at 10 Downing Street during lockdown that, of course, were uncovered by British media in recent months. What about them is so infuriating to the British public?
I think the big thing is that the British public, by and large, follow the rules. And when people see a leader who's not following the rules, or is perceived, I should say, perceived to not be following the rules, if it happens once, okay, we all make mistakes, we're all human. If it happens twice, okay, you start asking questions. But then when it's on a number of occasions, and it always leads back to the same person, in this case, Boris Johnson, there is a general feeling, a sentiment of, and these are the words that are being used, it's one rule for us and it's one rule for him. And a feeling that somehow Johnson is above it all. He thinks he's better than everybody else. He thinks the rules don't apply to him. And people are very angry. I mean, the UK has 150,000 people who died from COVID-19. People did follow the rules strictly. People weren't able to go to family members' funerals. They weren't able to say goodbye to loved ones. There's a lot of anger there, an awful lot of anger. And that is being picked up by Conservative MPs. So they are asking questions. But I think, like I said, I think for the time being, I think politically he's safe. He's safe, but this will go on. I mean, we will see the Metropolitan Police report. That has to come out at a certain point. And Johnson also committed this evening, once the police investigation is completed, to publish the Stu Gray report in full. He's committed to that. So until the police investigation and the report is published in full, it is going to continue to take up a lot of space in the UK domestic debate, when, of course, we have other issues like, for example, the situation in Ukraine, where I would just want to add, Johnson had to cancel a telephone call with Vladimir Putin today because he was taking up so much time in Parliament explaining to members of Parliament what was going on with the report.